almost 20 years. That's how long it's been since Pentax released their last film camera. So we're gonna do a proper review. It's been 6 months, the hype has died down. I know everyone was highly anticipating this release 6 months ago, but we've been using this camera for a while now, and we're gonna do our definitive review and see whether this camera is the right camera for you. Ian, roll the intro. So this is the quick guide on how to use this camera. This camera uses a CR2 battery such as this. What you have to do is you have to unscrew the battery compartment first. So it has a tiny screw that try not to lose it. Put the battery in the right direction. Okay, and then screw it back. So I'm just going to use the film cartridge to tighten it. Probably should actually use a coin. Okay, now we're going to load the film into the camera. So what you do is you pull out this film rewind knob. It will pop the back open. Once the back is open, you just have to put the cartridge in, and then you just extend the film leader all the way until you see the orange mark here. Make sure it's flat. Close it. Close the film rewind knob there, and make sure your camera is on. And then you just shoot a few images. And make sure you advance the film until you get to 0. Okay, 0. You will be ready to start taking your images. So I think we're more or less there. It has a few modes. Before you actually start shooting, you should set the ISO itself. So that's indicated here. So it's already preset to 400. But if you had to change it, you just press this button here, and then you can change the ISO to the necessary number. If you want to do some exposure compensation, you can either turn the ISO knob or you can turn the exposure compensation dial. It goes to 1/3 a stop up and down to all the way up to ±2. If you're a beginner and you're not sure what mode to shoot in, I would suggest you just switch to auto. If you want to use any flash settings, it's indicated by this knob. So just switch to the orange part of this dial. P is programmed, so it will use flash and it will automate everything for you. The crescent moon shape just implies that it's for night shot, so that it controls for any camera shake. Of course, if you don't want to use flash, then you switch to the white component of this knob. Whenever you're taking an image, just make sure you look at where you're focusing as well. So if you're focusing to infinity, make sure you're at mountains. The easiest way I found to remember this is when you're at flower, you're at 1/4 meter. When you're at the spoon and fork, you're at 1/2 meter. When you're at a person, you're 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, and then you're at infinity. So you can remember those numbers. Or if you can't remember them, you can actually refer to the numbers here at the base. They are in both meters and feet, so you shouldn't have any issues. Whenever you're focusing or taking images, you will notice that sometimes lights might be blinking. The top light usually indicates things to do with flash settings. So if I'm going to take an image now. So you see the flash go off and then it will blink as it charges. If let's say it's anything to do with exposure or errors in usage, the blue light underneath will actually blink or light up. So just if the blue light lights up, then you know something is amiss. Let's say if there's too little light, sorry, let me just change to a different mode. Okay, if let's say the film cover is on, it will actually flash as such. So just make sure if you see this error, you probably left the film cover on here. This camera can more or less focus as long as you set to the relevant mode, so it's very simple to use. To unload the camera, it is quite simple. Okay, just close everything. Make sure you press the rewind knob after you shot all the images, and then slowly you will pull the spool back. Okay, you'll find some resistance. Keep rewinding back until you feel no more resistance. Once you feel 0 resistance, that means the film has fully wound. And then all you have to do is pull up this and your film will be here to pull this up. Okay, take it out, send this to the lab and enjoy using your camera. So design and build quality wise, this camera is actually fantastic. I know many people have been complaining about the fact that it more or less feels like it's made of plastic. It doesn't even have actual leather on it. And a lot of people will actually compare it to the Mint Rolei 35AF. But given that despite this is being made in metal and this in plastic, this actually feels a lot better. It handles a lot better as well. In the hand, it's very comfortable. I can actually advance the lever very easily. It doesn't feel uncomfortable compared to, let's say, a camera such as this. This is not to shit on Rolei, the Rolei camera. I actually do enjoy using it, but I feel like whoever designed this camera, they spent a lot of time thinking about usability and comfort and ergonomics when they designed this camera. When you think about the viewfinder position, it's okay, you know, but I do wish that, you know, certain things like the lever was a bit larger, but battery compartment also is just easily accessible at the front here. Viewfinder position is a bit unusual compared to usual film cameras. So this is in a vertical orientation, more of a portrait orientation. Since this is half frame, this is ideal. I love the fact that when you look through the viewfinder, you can actually see your macro scale focus. It's a very analog way of doing it that doesn't like involve technology creep, I guess. So this, I thought it was quite ingenious actually. The fact that you can look through the viewfinder and you know which focus distance you are at. The knobs themselves, they actuate very easily. I don't think you can hear the focusing. I'm half pressing right now a few times, okay? The buttons are very comfortable to use. They turn very easily and very distinctly. I don't have it like locking at a position where it should not be. Even the lens, the zone focus moves so simply and so quietly. It's very easy to use. Loading the camera, of course, we'll cover that in a bit more detail, but just even like opening the camera and closing it, we have no issues, you know. Loading film in this camera wasn't a big deal because it's built very well. To be fair, Pentax has a rich heritage of building cameras, so I'm not surprised that they've made a camera who I think any beginner can easily fall in love with and use very easily and not have any qualms or discomfort using it prolonged, especially if you're going to take 72 shots. All right, so this camera has fantastic image quality. Pentax has a pedigree in making lenses and they are fantastic lenses. I would say the lens isn't like exceptionally sharp. If you ask me a digital equivalent, Ian and I think we both agree it has this Ricoh Pentax GR3 look to it. So all the images, they are stunning. And actually, if you're able to scan the images yourself, they look fantastic. They look super sharp. Being half frame, of course, you will notice that the grains are a little bit more noticeable, but that's to be expected from a half frame such as this. Image quality wise, also the lens, I didn't experience much flaring, not much chromatic aberration. I love the fact that this lens focuses even down to 30 cm with the included strap. This isn't the included strap, but if you use the included strap, you can do macro images with this camera. And I haven't had like any problems with exposure on this camera as well when we were shooting. So that's a side thing, but image quality wise, I guess this camera is actually perfect for a beginner. I do wish it came in full frame, but I guess maybe I'm asking for too much. Ian, I'm sure, will post some of the photos we've been taking. I've been taking a lot of photos on my walks with my kid. Ian has been playing around with the camera at Funan. I'm sure you saw one of his shots. It won something at Funan, the IT mall. I don't know how he did it. That image looks so blah, but he won something. So it just goes to show you that this camera is actually fantastic. The lens quality, the images that come out of this camera are just superb. If you know what you're doing with this camera, you can take fantastic images. Battery life on this Pentax 1.7 has been fantastic. So it can do about 10 cartridges. Of course, whether you're using flash or not, that will determine the exact number of cartridges that can go through a battery. These batteries are also modern. They're fairly affordable, about $5 a pop, and you can easily find them everywhere. It's not like old vintage cameras which uses like special batteries that are like mercury batteries with a special voltage. So this is an easily findable battery. Of course, if they made the battery compartment a bit more easily accessible, that would have been fantastic. This camera itself also, you know, as you know, takes your standard 135 cartridge rolls, and with a standard 36 exposure roll, you can get 72 shots. So if you can shoot 10 cartridges, that's like 720 shots. So film economy is definitely there. The fact that you can shoot so many images, I think this camera might be fantastic for beginners, because you might actually not have to worry about the film economy. You can shoot a bit more freely. Personally, as someone who shoots medium format a lot, I find 36 exposures a lot, and 72 exposures are so many, I don't know how to finish the roll. So if you're a beginner and you're worrying about the cost of film, this camera is actually a fantastic way to save money in the long run if you keep shooting half-frame images. Other than that, I think if actually like you don't like to shoot 36 exposure cartridges, you can even consider getting the 24 exposure cartridges. That way you have about 48 shots, which I think is a bit more manageable. But other than that, this camera seems quite good value for money, other than the fact that it is a little bit pricey, but overall on the long term wise, the cost of the camera is actually minimal. Most of your money will be actually spent on film and development. So the fact that you can make use of every film shot image in that roll, it makes this value buy, I guess. Yeah. Alright, so these are our subjective shooting experiences. I suggest you watch all the Pentax 1.7 videos out there, because each user has their own use case. So some might find this camera like perfect for them, some might not like it. This camera wasn't loaned, it wasn't given to us, it was loaned to us actually. Yes. But we used it for a fair bit of time. Ian even got hold of it quite early on.
Yep.
I've been using it maybe the last month or so. And these are, I guess, the things we loved about this camera and the things we didn't like about this camera. Okay, so maybe we'll give our top 3 things that we really loved about this camera. What do you love?
Actually, what I loved about this camera, right, is actually the weight of the camera. It's very light, and you can actually just hold it very easily in one hand, and you can do the Gen Z style of taking photos, and it's not going to break your wrist, and you can just put it in your bag, and it's a pretty good everyday camera because it's so light. You'll forget that it's there. Yeah, that's what I liked, first thing. Second thing is that actually the build quality is pretty good. People might say that it's made of plastic, but the plastic is very well put together. The plastic is very durable, and it doesn't flex at all. You know, if you try and twist it, right, it's actually solid. And the film door fits perfectly. It doesn't get stuck. Nothing gets stuck. Everything is good. And yeah, the last thing that I like about it is the lens. I think the lens is something that we loved about it. The image quality is extremely good. If you scan it yourself, use a low ISO film, I think, yeah, you can get very, very nice photos that you can post on Instagram. You can even print it out actually for some of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think these are fantastic reasons. I'll try not to repeat the same reasons, but a lot of them do overlap.
Yeah.
I do agree with the build quality. I do agree with the lens. I love the fact that this camera comes with warranty. Okay. And I also, this is a bit more philosophical, but I guess this camera signifies a new age. You know, it actually shows Pentax's desire to actually explore this film category, which we haven't had other camera makers really explore. So I love the fact that this camera is kind of like a signal to actually photographers in general that analog photography is actually here to stay. It's not a dead medium. A lot of people are still shooting it, so much so that brands such as Pentax and Leica are still fabricating cameras. So
before this, right, Leica was the only new film camera you could buy.
Or rather, to be fair, a decent film camera. You could still get like reloadable film cameras, but you couldn't really control any settings for that. I do love the fact that this camera is shooting everything on a half frame. Okay, as much as I have difficulty finishing the entire roll, I think it is fantastic that you can actually shoot in half frame, maximize the cartridge, and have like 72 images at the end. You can even do creative effects such as diptychs, where you take 2 images side by side and compose it as though it's one total image. The last thing I like about this camera is, of course, the viewfinder. Okay, I love the fact that they've done it in a very analog fashion, where you don't really have to look elsewhere. You will know whether you're focusing at the correct distance straight away.
And I like the fact that it's actually in the middle, not offset to the side. So if you do a close-up, right, it's not going to be so like offset.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll just add one more thing. As much as I hate the different light indicators, because there's so many options, I love the fact that despite it being a viewfinder camera, when there's the lens cover on, it will actually let you know that the light is too low. So it will actually tell you that there's a lens cover on and not to take the image. It won't actually allow you to take the image. So these are the things I loved about this camera. Okay, I think there are other users out there who've shared a bit more. But what are the things that really grind your gears in with this camera?
Okay, so the main thing that I have said in my previous video is that the lever is a bit too short and it's too near here. So when you try to advance the film, right, sometimes you inadvertently twist the mode dial. So if you have big thumbs, you probably need to get used to it because the lever is a bit short. So you end up like swiping against this. And yeah, I have switched this a couple of times before. So I didn't really like that. What else did I not like? Another thing I didn't like is that maybe they could have used a AA battery, which is much cheaper and easier to obtain than this CR2 battery. And also the screw is unnecessary. I don't know why they put a screw there. Could have put a latch or something. And the screw sometimes like rubs against your hand. Then that's that's what I didn't really like about it. Okay. What about you?
Yeah, so I agree with the screw. And it's a very tiny screw. It's very hard to screw in.
Yeah, and you can lose the screw because it comes off.
Yeah, it comes off quite easily. So just make sure you're securing it well. Yeah, the screw was a big annoyance. To me, I was a bit annoyed by the fact that despite it being a zone focus camera, you actually have to wait for the lens to move to the right zone focus. So I found that a bit weird. Like I felt like Pentax, you should have just installed autofocus, made life even more simpler for beginners, and just charge a bit more, you know?
I think it might come in the future.
Yeah. And last but not least, the thing that really I didn't really like was the price point. I felt it's a little bit too pricey for a half-frame camera, you know, especially one that doesn't really have much manual features. It's a bit pricey. But the thing is, when you compare to other cameras like a M6, Mint Rollei 35 AF.
You can't really compare this to like a M6.
Yeah, no, but
it's a different kind of product.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but then when you compare, then price seems to make sense.
Yeah.
But even then, for a beginner, because this is targeted towards beginners, it's actually a big chunk of money to spend. I think in some places it's going for like 899 euros.
Yes.
799 USD, which is a lot of money if you're going to spend on a film camera. For that price, you can actually get a manual film camera, and
you could even get an auto film camera actually.
Yeah, you could. You could actually go through 3 or 4 film cameras before you hit that sum of money. So I just wish Pentax had been a bit more, made the camera a bit more affordable. But I do understand there's a lot of R&D that went into it. Well, actually, if you have the time, I would implore you to go watch Pentax video on this camera and why they chose specific design elements. It really shows the thought and care they've gone to just to fabricate this thing. That's why it took so long. Like it took like what, better part of 2 years just to fabricate this.
But on the topic of price, I find that even though it's a bit expensive, I find that it's quite worth it because this probably will last you many years. The build quality feels like it can last many years, and given Pentax has been making cameras for the longest time, their cameras have been lasting many years.
Yes.
So no qualms about actually putting the money down because you know your investment is going to be sound for the next few years.
Yeah. And I guess like cameras such as these, they will last.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's any planned obsolescence planned into this camera. The fact that the battery itself is not lithium ion and it's user replaceable, that's a fantastic thing. All these parts, they were cannibalized off existing cameras. So I think repairability definitely will be there if you have all these old cameras. They also stuck to this vintage retro feel, amazing, you know? Yeah, so I guess that's our user experience so far. No real big complaints, I would say. Handling wise, it's been an easy to shoot camera. If you're a beginner, definitely you should consider it. This is a question that comes along all the time. Would I buy this camera? No, I wouldn't buy it. I like to use cameras one-handed. The unfortunate thing is I need to zone focus with this camera. I already have a zone focus camera, it's a Rollei 35. So I'm not really for this camera. I do see the appeal in beginners, as in I'm not saying this is a bad camera, it's just not the camera for me. This is, honestly, if you ask me, this is a fantastic camera. If you're a beginner out there and you are thinking of getting a camera, I would recommend this over the Rollei 35. You know, this is a no-brainer. You will definitely enjoy shooting this, just that you probably have to save a bit before you can actually afford a camera such as this. Yeah.
So I also wouldn't buy it because I will be waiting for next version of this camera with autofocus and probably maybe a electric motor wind, because I appreciate electric winding so I can just snap the photos, because the camera is a tool to snap photos, not to wind the film.
You guys haven't haven't experienced the suffering I have. Ian has been bitching about this film advance lever for the last 6 months.
Yes.
Like, Ian, just let it go, okay?
Yeah, because to me, right, the camera companies have always been like saying, oh, it's so difficult to engineer the film advance lever, then just don't. Just put a motor in it. I don't think many people mind. We just want to shoot film, we don't want to advance the film.
I guess so. But I guess some people love the analog sensation. So this is a user preference thing. That's why I guess this is not the camera for you. You know? But if you love using a film advance, that whole tactile sensation, you probably will enjoy this camera.
Yep.
I guess this is our so-called review of this camera. In summary, I think it's a fantastic camera if you're a beginner. If you're a hobbyist or enthusiast, you probably will not like the fact that this camera does not have like manual features, but it does have some ability to do exposure compensation. So as a beginner, you might find it a bit easier to use. The fact that you can put it fully on auto and take all your images, that is fantastic as well. Film economy is there, battery life is there. So as a beginner, I cannot not recommend this camera. This camera is fantastic because the engineers at Pentax, they really thought out every single function, even loading the film, which we usually take for granted as hobbyists, can be quite daunting to a beginner, and this camera makes it so much simpler and easy to get into starting shooting analog film formats. Of course, this isn't the only new camera on the block. The Mint company released their Rolei 35AF. So if you enjoyed this review, I suggest you check out our Rolei review as well. I think Ian will link it somewhere here. So we would love to hear your thoughts about the Pentax 17. I don't even know if it's called the Pentax 17 or Pentax 17. Pentax, can you like tell us? Yeah. But if you love this review, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode of Midlifers.